Hello, and welcome to the Quantum Fit Podcast. I'm Taylor, and I am your host. This podcast is all about applying principles of quantum physics and quantum biology to health and fitness. This gives us a holistic view of how different environmental factors, like EMF or sunlight, play a huge role in your overall health. Not just, the typical factors like diet, exercise, or good habits. If you want to really make lasting changes in how you feel, think, and act, then I would recommend you stick around, listen closely, and try to have an open mind to what I have to say. Every day I put out a new podcast episode that's between 7 and 15 minutes. I keep it short so that it's both informative and direct, so you don't feel overwhelmed with information. Also, I don't do any kind of advertisements right now, so instead, I ask that you share this podcast with a friend or family member if you enjoyed the message and gained something from it. I want to be able to spread quality and easy to understand content that everybody can take and use in their daily lives. I can't spread it so fast without your help, so I would highly appreciate it. Now, on to the episode. Today is titled AC versus DC and Humans. So, talking about the differences between AC and DC electricity and how it affects your health, among other things. So, AC, or alternating current, refers to electric currents where the polarity and voltage of the current is flipping back and forth between positive and negative at regular intervals. So this type of electricity, or energy overall, it's used in long-distance transmission. For instance, large power stations will, when they're providing electricity to different homes, say throughout the rural areas, it's really, really hard to send electricity out. AC does a much, much better job than DC because very, very little energy is lost this way. Same goes for streaming data. That's why all data, such as, through radio or through microwaves, like your phone uses, it's the same frequency. It uses AC because it's very efficient, and again, the data isn't really lost that way. Now, DC, or direct current, that's an electric current that has a constant polarity and charge, so it's not flipping back and forth between positive and negative like AC. So all electronics, for the most part, and all battery-operated devices use DC. And as far as I'm aware, all living beings on Earth have DC currents, or anything with, cells use DC currents, whether it's plants or humans or any other animals. Now, like I talked about in my last podcast on electromagnetism and healing, talked about how, in general, strong positive voltage indicates an issue, and a strong negative voltage indicates healing within the different tissues in humans and other animals. Just important to remember that and keep that in mind as we continue on here. Now, since electric currents and electromagnetic fields are really two sides of the same coin, because an electromagnetic field can be produced by an electric field and vice versa, this means an electromagnetic field can be made up of either DC or AC as well. So that means the field itself can have a constant charge, or it can be a flipping charge and flipping voltage. And I'm sure you can probably guess as to which field is going to always be bad for humans if you listen to my last podcast episode. Alternating current electromagnetic fields are always extremely disruptive to cells due to the constant flipping of charge. For instance, homes tend to have a wave frequency of 60 hertz. And what this means, and again, wave frequency, so what it literally means is that the wave changes charge from positive to negative 60 times a second. If you can imagine that graph, like say back in high school, where you're looking at a wave that goes up and down, that's AC. Okay, so that means that the charge, when it goes down, could be negative. When it goes up, it's positive. And that also means the voltage is constantly changing. Anyway, this type of electromagnetic field will cause a cell to change its own field with it. So a cell's own field will flip very, very rapidly, which is highly, highly unnatural. Normally it's a constant field. So bouncing back and forth between positive and negative fields tells the cells to switch between growth and basically decay, or death sequence. Because that's how it is, again, in wounds. Because if there's a wound, first it'll be positive, and then afterwards it'll become, the positive is to detect, it tells the body that there is a wound there. There's an issue, a major issue here. But then it becomes very negative, and then the cell begins healing. So now, ultimately, cells respond by dividing way, way faster than what is normally possible when the field keeps flipping back and forth, back and forth. So this is one way that EMF, or electromagnetic frequency, electromagnetic fields, can cause cancer. It makes cells divide more often, which means some stem cells will be depleted faster, mutations are more bound to show up, and the environment becomes ripe for cancer because of this. So that's why AC electromagnetic fields are extremely bad for, all living things, really, because, again, all living things use DC. They don't operate off AC. The alternating current and alternating, between positive and negative is extremely unnatural. Now, of course, an overly powerful negative or positive direct current or DC field will be, just as dangerous. Cells need a balance of growth and decay signaling, and having too much of one or the other is definitely going to cause some issues. So the takeaway here in this podcast episode is to try to limit your exposure to electromagnetic fields, or I'm just going to shorten it to EMF from here on out for future episodes. What this generally looks like is spending less time on all electronics, shutting off your Wi-Fi at night, and putting your phone on airplane mode when you aren't using it. I'll go much more in depth on how exactly you can limit your exposure to electromagnetic fields in a future episode. But anyways, thanks for listening to this podcast episode on AC and DC. If you have something you want to ask me or a comment about the podcast itself, please leave me a comment or a question, whether it's on YouTube or through Anchor, through their voice message, or Instagram at RealQuantumFit, or even just find me on my own personal profile on Facebook, Taylor Kelson. All right, well, you'll hear me again tomorrow. See you guys.